Register now.
Hello, my dear children. Namaste and welcome to the very first session of our brand new series, Bio Bites in 15 minutes, wherein we intend to give you your concepts in bite-sized videos. This is Ambika, your biology master teacher right here at Vedantu. Well, guys, as I have told you earlier, let me just recall that through this series, we don't intend to go in depth. Well, that has already been taken care of, right? We've already had a major, like a main playlist where you can find each of your concepts discussed well in detail. But then, just in case you are looking for something very, very quick, this is the thing for you. And as promised, we get started with the CBSE Class 10 topics. The first one of which is nutrition from the chapter Life Processes. Okay, so let's go ahead as always, starting with a positive quote. Do good and good will definitely come to you. Let's always remember to be kind and bring a positive impact on our own lives and at the same time on the lives of people around us in the world, right? Okay, so the purpose of nutrition, starting with that. Well, nutrition is required for all living organisms, be it a plant, animal, or any living organism, for three major things: growth, development, and protein synthesis. Rather, protein synthesis, growth, and development. Well, if you think about it, all of these three are interrelated. In general, if you're talking about very, very simple organisms, which are neither plants nor animals, like some kind of unicellular organisms and all of that, maybe more of growth and development would apply to them than synthesizing protein. But of course, that is also a major part when you think about it. So all these three summarize everything with regard to the purpose of nutrition. Why is it required, right? Okay, now moving ahead, the types of organisms based on nutrition. There are two major types of organisms based on the type of nutrition or the mode of nutrition. Some of them have the ability to prepare their own food. We call them autotrophs. The best examples for which are the plants around us. What do? They use simple inorganic substances from nature, like carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and they have the ability to prepare organic substances like glucose, right? So this process by which plants are able to achieve this, we call it photosynthesis. So plants are an example of autotrophs, and the mode of nutrition is autotrophic nutrition. Okay, so that's about autotrophs. Well, let me also remind you that it's not just plants. There are also certain bacteria which contain chlorophyll, having chloroplast as an organelle in their cells, that have the ability to carry out photosynthesis. There are also certain bacteria which have the ability to carry out chemosynthesis, wherein light wouldn't be the source of energy. Rather, some chemical source of energy would be used to prepare their own food. Anyway, all of them, photosynthetic or chemosynthetic, would come under the category of autotrophs because they synthesize their own food after all. Right, now coming to the next category where we all would belong, heterotrophs. Right, what do? We have to depend on other organisms which would be our source of food. Of course, we can prepare our own food in the kitchen, but then the raw materials, where do we get that from? We have to depend either on plants or depend on other animals, if at all we are non-vegetarians, so that we can fulfill our nutritional needs, right? We call ourselves, along with any other organism which depend on other organisms for their nutritional needs, as heterotrophs, because heteros means others and trophos is nutrition. So the source of food for heterotrophs may either be a static source like plants or grass, or plants like grass or any other plant, even vegetables and fruits, or it can be a mobile source of food like other animals, right? Okay, so that's about heterotrophic. Let me also remind you at this point that there are three major types of heterotrophic nutrition, which are holozoic, okay, saprotrophic, I'm just writing the short forms for you, and also parasitic. Okay, now we would mainly focus on holozoic nutrition because we fall into that category. Okay, so before we move on to heterotrophs, let's look at what photosynthesis is. As I have told you, this is a process which specially happens in autotrophs most autotrophs like plants, wherein they have the ability to convert atmospheric oxygen and water they absorb from the soil through their roots in the presence of solar energy into glucose and release oxygen in the process. Okay, so in fact, I would also add here chlorophyll, because chlorophyll is also important in this process of photosynthesis. Without that magical pigment, this cannot occur. So C6H12O6 is the chemical formula of glucose. In general, we call them sugars. Carbohydrates, we call them sugars. So this is the equation which summarizes photosynthesis: 6CO2 plus 6H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, producing glucose or sugars in general and oxygen. And this oxygen ends up being the life-sustaining gas which you, I, and most other aerobically respiring organisms breathe in. Okay, so this is about photosynthesis. Now coming to holozoic nutrition, talking about amoeba, which is a unicellular organism, yet something that has a eukaryotic cell. We call it a eukaryote. It's a unicellular eukaryote. And as a result, it has the ability to fulfill its nutritional needs by capturing the food and digesting the food intracellularly, just like we do. We are also an example of holozoic nutrition. So what does amoeba do? There are 5 major steps of holozoic nutrition, starting with ingestion, which is the act of eating the food. Okay, ingestion. Okay, second step after eating would be digestion. Related to us, our body also, after eating, it starts getting digested. This is followed by absorption. The nutrients have to get absorbed by the body, right? And then assimilation. The absorbed nutrients have to get utilized for the various needs. That is assimilation. And then comes egestion, wherein the undigested food would be eliminated from the body through the process of egestion. So in our body, of course, the mode is different. Amoeba, being a very, very simple organism, has one single cell to take care of all of these. Okay, but then the steps remain the same, be it amoeba or human beings. Steps of holozoic nutrition would always be ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and egestion. Okay, so coming to human beings, well, this is something that we can easily relate to. We eat the food which goes down through our food pipe or esophagus, reaches our stomach, then goes into our small intestine. In the small intestine, remember, it receives secretions from our liver and pancreas as well. And in the small intestine, it also gets absorbed by the villi of the small intestine. The undigested food gets eliminated through the large intestine, eventually through the anus. This is what happens in human beings. But I know the steps may be a little difficult for you to recall. So let's just go through it. The alimentary canal, which is the long tube starting with the buccal cavity, which is the oral cavity, and ends in the anus. This long tube is what we call the alimentary canal. Each part of the alimentary canal has a specific function. In the buccal cavity, for example, the tongue, teeth, and the salivary glands play a major role. The teeth break down the food. Tongue, muscular action of the tongue helps in converting it into bolus. The salivary glands produce saliva, which contains salivary amylase that combines with the food to break down some of the complex carbohydrates. Remember, the enzyme in the saliva is salivary amylase, which has the ability to break down carbohydrates. Okay, so children, I would honestly say the best way to remember the role of each of our alimentary canal parts is to think about yourself eating a complete Indian thali. When I say a complete Indian thali, it should be made up of either rotis or rice. Okay, then it has to have some kind of dal. It has to have some vegetables. It has to have some green leafy cooked green leafy vegetables also. It has to have some raw salads, some fruit, and some dairy products like ghee or butter, yogurt also. Okay, that makes it a complete Indian diet. Okay, you can also add papad, whatever you would love to have in your meal. All right, and why is it helpful in remembering this way? As you think about each of your parts of the alimentary canal, think about which food in the thali gets digested in each of these parts. For example, the rice or the roti starts its digestion in the mouth by the action of the salivary amylase. Okay, then the food comes down through the esophagus. You can also see something called the epiglottis, which is a flap like structure that covers the respiratory tract, covers the larynx while you swallow food, so that the food doesn't by mistake enter into your respiratory tract. Okay, so now food enters through the esophagus or the food pipe and now comes into the stomach. In the stomach, there are gastric glands which produce gastric juices comprised of three major secretions: HCl, pepsin, and also mucus. Okay, in the stomach, HCl, which helps in reducing the pH. Okay, so what is the advantage of reducing pH? Two major purposes to this. One is because a very low pH, like the case of hydrochloric acid, would ensure that a lot of germs which may have entered with your food can get eliminated. The second purpose of HCl is to activate the enzyme pepsin. What does pepsin do? It digests proteins, not complete digestion, but it has the ability to break down proteins up to a certain extent. The dal which is in your food gets digested, but gets broken down to a certain extent by pepsin. Okay, now what about mucus? Well, remember, HCl is a very, very strong acid. Mucus is there to protect your own stomach walls from the harmful effects of this acid. Okay, so now the partially digested food from the stomach enters into the small intestine. Sorry, I struck over it. Small intestine. Okay, so this orange part is the small intestine, wherein there is the secretion of two major organs which are received, which are the liver and the pancreas. What does your liver secrete? Liver secretes bile. What does bile do? It can emulsify fats. Okay, so bile is produced by the liver, stored temporarily in the gallbladder, and from there it gets secreted into your small intestine. Okay, so bile emulsifies fats. Okay, then what does the pancreas do? Pancreas contains pancreatic juice. Okay, pancreatic juice, as we commonly call it. What does it contain? It contains pancreatic amylases, which have the ability to break down carbohydrates to an extent. It has the ability to there are also certain lipases which can break down fats, and there is also trypsin which can digest protein. Everything which is part of pancreatic juice, carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids can be digested by this. Okay, so what happens is, in addition to bile and pancreatic juice which get poured into the small intestine, the small intestinal walls also secrete what we call intestinal juice, and that ultimately completes the process of digestion, so that complex carbohydrates get broken down to glucose, proteins get broken down to amino acids, have a look at this, and fats get broken down to fatty acids and glycerol. And ultimately, each of these nutrients would get absorbed by the villi in the walls of the small intestine, which are richly supplied with blood capillaries, and thus they get transported by the bloodstream into the various parts of your body, because there are trillions of cells in your body which are in need of these nutrients. Villi help in absorbing them. Okay, so villi greatly help in increasing the surface area of absorption in the small intestine. This is what happens inside the small intestine. And then, now coming to the undigested part of your food. If there is anything that hasn't gotten digested, it would enter into the large intestine, right? So it goes further and further down the large intestine, wherein the large intestinal walls would absorb any excess water which is there in this food, so that it can solidify this waste matter, as we now call it, eliminates it, temporarily stores it in the rectum until it's ready for elimination through the anus. This is the process of egestion, not excretion. Remember, it is egestion. Excretion is what happens through your urinary system with the help of your kidneys. So this is how nutrition in human beings, digestion in human beings occurs. Okay, so these are the end products of digestion, and this is everything at a glance for you, for your reference. Mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine. In the meantime, mention liver and pancreas as well. Then the large intestine, rectum, and the anus. Okay, children, so now the entire session in a bite size for your reference. Remember, we have seen the purpose of nutrition. Based on nutrition, there are two types of organisms, autotrophs and heterotrophs, and the modes being autotrophic and heterotrophic respectively. Autotrophs typically carry out photosynthesis, some of them also chemosynthesis. The digestive system of heterotrophs depends on the complexity of their body. For example, amoeba, although it's a simple organism, it carries out holozoic nutrition, but it has no definite digestive system. Yet it carries out holozoic nutrition. Human beings are complex, they have a proper digestive system, which we call alimentary canal. Okay, children, so if you have found this useful, remember to click the like button right now and share it with all your friends. Definitely all of them would benefit from this. And remember, in addition to the YouTube videos, we also have a lot of amazing content for you in the pro subscription courses. So remember to visit the link in the description box below and check out the pinned comment in the comment section. Apply the coupon code AMBPRO to get them, to avail them at the best possible prices. Okay, children, so as I always say, best content available at pocket-friendly rates is what Vedantu Pro subscription is all about. So, remember to stay subscribed also to our channel Vedantu 9th and 10th English, because we have just got started with the amazing series Bio Bites in 15 minutes, and we intend to do a lot more in the days to come. And children, remember to follow me on Instagram as well, Ambika_Vedantu, wherein you can watch a lot of interesting stories that I keep putting up there, moral stories, and a lot of other interesting and exciting stuff also. I would love to interact with you. And children, one more thing before we sign off, remember to post your comments in the comment section below also as to how this helped you. I would love to hear your feedback on this. And until we meet again, take care, stay happy, and stay healthy. Bye-bye.